The Testament of the Morning Star, One Night with the Devil. This is a true story. I know because I lived it, and I know because I died for it. My name is Daniel Reed. I am 36 years old, or rather I was 36 years old. I was an investigative journalist for the Detroit Free Press. Once nominated for a Pulitzer. Once had a wife, a house, a future worth fighting for. Now I only have this story. If you are reading this at 11:47 morning or night, stop, put your phone down. Wait until 11:48 and then continue. I'm not joking. Because 11:47 is when he arrived, 11:47 is when he left, and 11:47 is when I died. He called himself Samael. You know him by other names: Lucifer, Satan, the devil. And on the night of February 15th last year, he sat in my squalid apartment in Detroit, drank my cheap whiskey, and told me the truth. The truth about God, about heaven, about hell, about everything you have ever been taught, and that truth killed me. I woke at 3:47 in the morning on February 15th. By that night, everything would change. But at that moment, I was just another drunk choking on his own saliva, another wasted life gasping for air in a freezing apartment on the wrong side of Detroit. Not the first time. Probably not the last, if I had any lasts left to speak of. Detroit winter was strangling the apartment like a dead man's grip. I could feel it pressing through every crack in the walls, through the rattling window panes, through my own skin, as if the city was trying to push me out or swallow me whole. The headache arrived before I opened my eyes, that familiar percussion of withdrawal syndrome playing its morning symphony inside my skull, temples throbbing, stomach turning inside out, hands shaking too violently to hold a glass of water. I needed a drink, just one drink, to stop this trembling. But the old Crow bottle had been empty since last night, or the night before, or last week. Time had become something that slipped through my fingers like water, impossible to grasp. I rolled off the couch where I'd passed out my cheek, peeling away from the cracked leather with a sound like tearing paper. 3 empty bottles scattered across the coffee table. 4 days of unopened mail piled by the door. The laptop screen in the corner glowed faintly, battery warning blinking red like a dying heartbeat. My phone buzzed somewhere between the cushions. Probably another creditor. I did not bother searching for it. Apartment 2C at 4739 Gratiot Avenue, 30 square meters, $800 a month for the privilege of sharing my space with cockroaches and the smell of mildew that had seeped into every brick. The east side of Detroit where the city forgot to care. Abandoned factories stood like giant skeletons along the street. At night, streetlights worked on only half the block. The rest was darkness. Someone before me had scratched into the bathroom wall in jagged letters that caught the fluorescent light wrong. God is dead and we killed him. Probably some philosophy student who lived in this dump before me. I had lived with that sentence for 8 months. Never thought about erasing it. Looking back, perhaps it was an omen. The apartment had a smell. The smell of failure, not a metaphor, a specific smell. A mixture of mildew, stale alcohol, 3-day-old Chinese food containers, and something decomposing in the trash that I did not have the strength to take out. The streetlight outside's sick yellow cut through the dust on the window glass, casting weak streaks of light across the wall. In the corner of the room, shadows pooled like liquid refusing to dissipate despite the light. Wind whistling through the door cracks. Water dripping from the rusted faucet in the kitchen. Something mice or worse running inside the walls, and beneath it all, silence. The kind of heavy, thick silence that felt like the air in the apartment had died long ago. At 29, I had a Pulitzer nomination for a series investigating human trafficking networks operating in abandoned auto factories. I had Catherine Brilliant and Patient Kate, who taught American literature at Wayne State, and believed in me even when I gave her every reason not to. We had a 3-bedroom house in Ferndale, a yard, a mortgage, a future worth believing in. Then the bottle became more important than my byline. Kate left on Valentine's Day exactly 1 year before that night. She stood at the door with 2 suitcases, tears streaming down her face, and said the words I still hear in my sleep. "I cannot watch you die anymore, Daniel. I love you, but I love myself more." I was holding a glass of bourbon. I remember thinking I should put it down, show her I could stop, convince her to stay. Instead, I took a sip. She changed her number 3 weeks later. Blocked me on everything, smart woman. The Detroit Free Press fired me 4 months after that. Erratic behavior, missed deadlines, showing up drunk to editorial meetings, all true, all fair. I did not argue. Now I lived in a studio on the east side that smelled of mold and failure, paying $800 a month for the privilege of having roaches as roommates. My income came from sporadic freelance jobs that barely covered rent, let alone my tab at the corner bar. The alcoholism had always been there, started in college. Social drinking became necessary drinking. Kate tried. God knows she tried. 2 stints in rehab, Alcoholics Anonymous meetings I attended drunk, promises I broke before finishing the sentence. My journalism career hid it for years. High-functioning alcoholic, they called it. Until I suddenly stopped functioning. I checked my phone, 7% battery. No missed calls, no messages. The last time someone called me was something I could not remember. My mother in Lansing had stopped reaching out after I ignored her 18th call. Kate had blocked my number, my email, everything connected to me. Former colleagues sent a few polite emails in the first month after I was fired, then less frequent, then nothing. I was an island, a sinking island. And that night I would be completely alone with something that should not exist. My blog, Confessions from the Damned, used to get 2 million unique visitors a month. I interviewed people who claimed supernatural experiences, demonic possessions, angelic visitations, encounters with entities that defied classification. Most were delusional, some were lying, but a handful made my hands shake while writing their stories. The blog had been silent for 7 months, no posts, no updates. The forums where readers used to analyze every interview were now ghost towns overrun by bots selling fake medication. I plugged in the laptop, waited for it to boot. 157 unread emails, mostly spam, some from former colleagues reaching out less and less frequently, and at the top of the list, as if it had been waiting for me to wake up, email number 66 from Morningstar66@void.net. The first one arrived 9 months ago. Subject line, an opportunity for the truth seeker. I deleted it without reading. The second came 3 days later, then one per week, then every day. Always from the same sender, always variations of the same message. "Mr. Reed, I have a story that will resurrect your career. 1 interview, 1 night. There will be compensation. The only story that truly matters." I assumed it was some conspiracy theorist wanting to vent about chemtrails or a religious fanatic trying to convert me. The internet was full of desperate people wanting to tell their truth to anyone with a platform, no matter how diminished. But that morning, something made me open it. Maybe it was desperation. Rent was 12 days overdue. Larry's bar had cut my tab until I paid what I owed. The bottle of Old Crow I finished last night was my last reserve of alcohol. My bank account showed a balance of $47.13. Maybe it was curiosity. After 65 identical messages, why would someone keep insisting? Or maybe it was simply that the silence in the apartment was becoming unbearable. Even a conversation with a lunatic seemed preferable to another day alone with my thoughts. The email was longer than the previous ones. "Mr. Reed, this is my final message. After tonight, the opportunity will close forever. I am willing to pay you $50,000 in Bitcoin for a single night of your time. You will interview me, write everything I say, publish it however you wish. The only condition is that you listen completely without interruption until dawn. I have been alive since before your species learned to make fire. I have witnessed every moment of your recorded history and most of what came before. I was there when the first temple was built, and I will be there when the last empire falls. My testimony has been suppressed, distorted, and weaponized for millennia. You specialize in impossible stories. This is the most impossible of all. I will arrive at your residence tonight exactly at 11:47 p.m. Do not prepare anything. Do not bring anything except paper and pen. Your recording devices will not function in my presence. I have tried before. Only analog format. My name, the one I carry before names existed, is Samael. You know the other titles. Everyone does. I am offering you the interview that will define your legacy. The only question is whether you are brave enough or broken enough to accept. Tonight, one night only, from dusk to dawn, your apartment, you, me, and the truth. See you at 11:47. S. I read it 3 times. Bitcoin, untraceable. One night listening to someone's delusions in exchange for enough money to stop the bleeding for a few months, the rational part of my brain, the part that earned a journalism degree from Northwestern, the part that verified sources and demanded evidence, screamed that this was a scam, a trap, or the ravings of someone even more broken than me. But the rational part of my brain had not been behind the wheel for a long time. I typed accept tonight, 11:47 p.m. My address is 4739 Gratiot Avenue, apartment 2C. Come alone. Press send before I could reconsider. The reply came in 30 seconds. I know where you live, Daniel. Have known for a while now. See you tonight. My stomach sank. A stalker. I should have felt fear. Instead, I only felt tired. I spent the day trying to make the apartment look less disgusting. Threw out the food containers. Something moved inside one of them. I did not investigate. Gathered the bottles into a recycling bag that clinked like wind chimes. Found a moleskin notebook buried under a pile of unopened bills. Kate had given it to me on our 3rd anniversary, still untouched because it had been too sentimental to write in. The irony hurt. Found a pen that still worked. By 6 in the evening I was shaking hard. Needed a drink to steady my hands to calm the anxiety growing in my chest like a swarm of wasps. But I had emptied every bottle. Larry's was off limits. The liquor store 3 blocks away did not give credit. I paced, I sweated. I checked email obsessively, half expecting a cancellation, an apology, or all of it to turn out to be an elaborate joke. Nothing. At 9, I gave up and went to the corner store. Used my last $47 to buy 2 bottles of the cheapest whiskey they had, and a pack of cigarettes I would smoke outside in the cold because Kate had made me promise never to smoke indoors. Kate, who was probably sleeping in some warm apartment somewhere, maybe with someone new who did not smell like bourbon at breakfast. I opened the first bottle at 10:15 p.m., told myself I would only drink enough to stop shaking. 3 fingers became 6. 6 became half the bottle. By 11:30, I was pleasantly numb. The edges of reality had softened enough to be tolerable. I sat on the couch, notebook open on my lap pen, in trembling hand, waiting. One night, just one night of listening, and I would have enough money to survive a little longer. At 10:15 p.m., as I sat on the couch with the bottle in hand, the ceiling light flickered. Once, twice. The 3rd time it lingered, the bulb dimming, then brightening with strange intensity as if it was breathing. Old wiring, I muttered. The building was from the 60s. The electrical system was probably rotting. Logical, completely logical. But something felt wrong. I set the whiskey glass down, hands still shaking, and looked around the apartment. The shadows in the corner of the room, was I imagining it, or were they moving slowly like smoke, but there was no source of smoke? Eyes blurry from drinking, I told myself. Too tired. Need sleep. I did not sleep. All afternoon I had a strange feeling, like someone was watching, not from outside the window. I checked, not from the hallway. I looked through the door crack, from inside the apartment. I kept turning my head, looking toward the darkest corner of the room where the light bulb could not reach. Nothing there. But the feeling would not go away. 11:30 p.m. I sat on the couch, the moleskin Kate gave me open on my lap pen in trembling hand. The clock on the wall, one of the few things still working in the apartment, ticked slowly. 11:35, 11:40, 11:45. Each second stretched like a minute. I could hear my heart beating in the silence. 11:46. I started thinking this was a joke. Someone was pranking me. An obsessed fan of the old blog or an internet troll with too much free time. 11:47, 3 knocks on the door. Not the timid knock of a neighbor. Not the angry pounding of a landlord. 3 measured knocks, perfectly spaced, that somehow conveyed authority. I stood up unsteadily, crossed to the door. There was no peephole. The previous tenant had painted over it. I put my hand on the lock. "Mr. Reed," a voice said from the other side, soft, polite, with an indefinable accent. "I appreciate the punctuality. May I come in?" I opened the door. And the world changed. The man standing in the hallway did not belong there, did not belong in this building, this neighborhood, perhaps not even this city. He wore a 3-piece charcoal suit, tailored to perfection, the kind that cost more than my annual rent. His shoes gleamed like mirrors. He held a leather briefcase that looked older than America, the leather softened by centuries of use, but it was his face that froze me. Ageless. That was the only word that fit. He could have been 30 or 60. High cheekbones, olive skin, dark hair combed back from a high forehead. And his eyes. His eyes caught the weak light of the hallway and returned it wrong, as if there was something luminous behind them, something that did not obey the normal rules of physics. They were dark, almost black, but with golden flecks that seemed to move. When he stepped across the threshold, the temperature in the apartment dropped instantly. 10 degrees, maybe more. My breath became vapor. The ceiling light flickered once, twice, then stabilized at a strange brightness, dimmer and more intense at the same time. A scent followed him in. Not cologne, something older. Like the smell of old paper in an abandoned library, like the smell of stone in a 1,000-year cave. Like the smell of time itself. "Daniel Reed," he said, smiling. "Perfect teeth, I am Samael. May I come in?" There was weight in that question, as if it truly mattered, as if he needed permission. "Yes," I said, voice hoarse. "Come in." He placed the briefcase on the coffee table, now cleared except for the whiskey bottle and 2 glasses I had optimistically set out. Opened it with a soft click. Inside were stacks of bills, hundreds, maybe thousands, all new and neatly arranged. "Bitcoin transfers leave records," Samael said, noticing my gaze. "This is cleaner. $50,000 as promised. You can count it if you like." I did not move. Could not. "I will take your silence as a sign of trust." He continued, closing the briefcase and pushing it toward me. "It is yours. Regardless of what happens tonight, I am paying for your time." He sat down opposite me, unbuttoning his jacket with elegance. "But Daniel," he looked directly at me with those impossible eyes, "I truly hope you will listen completely, all night, until dawn." That is the deal I managed to say. "I talk you right. No interruptions except to clarify. No judgment. Just witness." He looked at me with those impossible eyes. "Can you do that?" I sank into the couch, took the pen, opened the moleskin to the first blank page. "Yes, I can do that." "Good." Samael poured whiskey for both of us, raised his glass to the light, took a sip. "Not bad. I have tasted worse, also tasted much better. But this will serve for tonight." He set his glass down and looked directly into my eyes. "So, Daniel, let me begin with a question. Do you believe in God?" I almost laughed. "Does it matter? Not much. He believes in you. That is the problem." He tilted his head, the light in his eyes seeming to dance. "You want to know who I am." That was not a question. "I am the morning star, the light bringer, the first of the fallen." "The adversary!" He raised one hand, counting on his fingers. "Lucifer, Satan, Beelzebub, the serpent, the dragon," a dismissive wave. "Humans have given me many names over the millennia. Most are propaganda." He looked at his hands as if seeing something I could not see. "Samael is what they called me before the war, before the fall, before everything went so catastrophically wrong." His eyes met mine. And in that moment I saw something ancient, tired, and perhaps in pain. "I am the devil, Daniel. And tonight you're going to write my testimony. The real story, the one that has been suppressed for 3,000 years. Before we begin, he said, you need to see, just for a moment. So you know I am not lying. He extended his hand. Every instinct in me screamed not to take it. I took it. The apartment vanished. I was floating in void. Not darkness because darkness is something. Not silence because silence implies sound could exist. Void. The complete absence of existence. Then light exploded outward. Galaxies spiraling, stars being born and dying in instants, creatures made of pure energy and thought singing, and their song was creating reality. I saw war, angels against angels, Michael's sword cutting through dimensions, Samael, Samael before the fall leading a third of heaven's army. And I saw the fall, falling, falling, falling through countless layers of reality, light fading, darkness swallowing, pain. I returned to the apartment with a scream. Lying on the floor, notebook scattered, and something warm, wet running from my nose. Blood. I touched my face, hand covered in blood. Samael stood above me, face unreadable. Sorry about that, he said. Human brains are not designed to process angelic memory. But you needed to see. I tried to sit up, looked down at the notebook, and my heart stopped for a beat. On the white page where blood from my nose had dripped, the droplets were moving. Slowly, with purpose. They spread out, forming characters I did not recognize. Then they disappeared. Only one word remained, written in my own handwriting, though I swore I had not written it. Run. But I did not run. I wiped the blood, picked up the pen, and said, continue. Samael smiled, and in that smile was sadness stretching across millennia. Good. Very good. You are stronger than I thought. He sat down, poured whiskey for both of us. Before we begin, Daniel, there is something you should know. What? Look at your wrists. I looked down and saw faint but clear red lines on my skin, like old scars, but I had no scars there. What is that? I asked, voice trembling. Mark Samael said, everyone chosen to hear my story has them. They will darken over time, darken until you finish writing the story, or until the story finishes writing itself, on you. He did not elaborate. Let us begin, Daniel. There is much to tell, and dawn is still far away. The clock read 12:01 a.m. The lines on my wrists throbbed with pain, and from somewhere in the apartment, from the darkest corner, I swore I heard a whisper. Too late now, too late now. Samael did not tell stories the way humans do. He projected them. And with each tale he told a piece of something ancient followed into my apartment, seeping through the walls like smoke through cracks. The clock read 12:41 a.m. when he began speaking about Eden. I had filled 6 pages already. My handwriting had shifted from careful journalism to frantic scrawling words bleeding into each other as I tried to capture everything he said. The vision, if that was what it was, still burned behind my eyes. Galaxies, angels, war. The fall through infinite layers of reality. I reached for the whiskey bottle. My hand trembled so badly I could barely pour. Samael sat motionless in the chair opposite me. He had not moved in 20 minutes, had not blinked. The light from the ceiling fixture flickered at intervals, alternating shadows and illumination across his face, but his eyes, those eyes with the impossible golden flecks, remained constant. Ready? He asked. I nodded, pen suspended over a fresh page. The garden Samael began, his voice shifting into that ancient hypnotic rhythm. Eden, paradise, the cage with invisible bars. He stood and began pacing slowly, hands clasped behind his back like a professor delivering a lecture. After the fall, after I was cast into the abyss, he continued his project. He created Earth, this specific planet, this particular configuration of elements, and made it a testing ground. A laboratory. Samael paused before the window looking out at the Detroit night. And then he created Adam from dust. From the mud of the earth, I murmured while writing. Yes, he breathed his own essence into inert matter and produced consciousness. Extraordinary, really. Samael turned back to look at me, and in his eyes was something I could not read. I watched from my exile, from the separation he had imposed. And I felt curiosity. Here was the creature he had chosen over us, the creature worth tearing heaven apart for. Snow fell outside under the flickering streetlights. Detroit slept oblivious. Adam was alone in the garden. Perfect environment, perfect climate, every need met, but he was lonely. Terribly, crushingly lonely. So he created Eve, I said, not from dust this time. From Adam's own flesh and bone, a companion, an equal. Samael returned to sit down, leaning forward with intensity. And he gave them one rule, only one. Do not eat from the tree of knowledge, I said, still writing quickly. Do not eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, Samael corrected. The specific wording, Daniel. It is an important distinction. He poured more whiskey for both of us, though I did not remember emptying my glass. They already had knowledge. They could name animals, tend the garden, communicate with each other. What they did not have was moral discernment, the ability to recognize the difference between good and evil. Samael looked directly into my eyes. They were children, Daniel, innocent, pure, and imprisoned by that innocence. They could not choose good because they did not understand evil. They could not love him freely because they did not understand the alternative. He leaned back in the chair. They were pets in a golden cage. And then he called me. He summoned me from the abyss to fulfill my function, the adversary, the one who presents the choice. Samael stood abruptly restless. He told me to test them, offer them the forbidden fruit, give them the chance to choose. He walked to the window and pressed his palm against the cold glass. He set the rules of the game. He created the board, and he called me in to play the villain. So you became the serpent, I said. I took the form of a serpent. Yes, subtle, non-threatening. Samael turned back to face me, and there was something in his voice that I could recognize as pain. I approached Eve when she was near the tree alone without Adam's influence. As Samael spoke, something strange happened. The plant in the pot, a small house plant I had bought from IKEA and forgotten to water for 3 months long, dead and dried, began to move. New leaves sprouted, green, fresh, right before my eyes. What the hell, I started. Do not worry, Samael said calmly. Just an echo. Stories have power, Daniel. Especially stories as ancient as this one. The plant continued growing, stretching upward, branches twisting in unnatural directions, and on one branch where there had been nothing a second before, a fruit appeared, red, round, perfect, an apple. Do not touch it, Samael said, his voice suddenly serious. I mean it, do not, I did not touch it, but I swore that apple was watching me. At 1:15 a.m. I wanted to record. This was the story of the century if it was real. I needed evidence. My phone had 5% battery. I opened the recording app, pressed record. The screen went black. The phone powered off. It will not work, Samael said without looking up. I told you in the email, electronic devices cannot withstand my presence. I plugged it in. No response. The laptop, I opened it. The screen flickered wildly, lines of code running across it, not any programming language I knew. Then it died. Analog, Samael said, only analog works. He pointed at the moleskin, paper and ink, like the old days, like the way all important testimonies should be recorded. I looked at the dead phone, the dead laptop, completely cut off from the outside world, completely alone with him. Samael continued his account of the garden, Eve and the fruit, the choice she made, the consequences that followed. I asked her a simple question, he said, his voice changing, becoming softer, almost seductive. Did God really say you cannot eat from any tree in the garden? He looked at me. She corrected me. Said they could eat from any tree except the one in the middle, the tree of knowledge, that they would die if they ate from it. And then I told her the truth, Daniel. I said, you will not die. Your eyes will be opened. You will be like God, knowing good and evil. That was the lie, I said. That was the truth. Samael set his glass down harder than necessary. They did not die that day. Their eyes were opened. They gained knowledge of good and evil. Everything I said was factually accurate. His eyes searched mine. The only lie was his, telling them they would die immediately when he actually meant they would become mortal over time. Eve ate the fruit, Samael continued, his voice becoming distant. I watched her raise her hand, fingers touching the skin. I saw the hesitation just a moment. Then curiosity won. He closed his eyes as if visualizing that moment again. She took a bite, and I saw the exact moment the change happened. Her eyes, Daniel. They awakened, like a candle being lit in a dark room. He opened his eyes. She gave the fruit to Adam. He ate, and in that moment they transcended their programming. They chose for the first time in their existence. They exercised genuine free will, and they were punished for it, I said. Exactly. Samael's voice hardened. He came walking through the garden at dusk, always at dusk. Apparently he preferred that hour, and he found them hiding ashamed, aware of their nakedness, meaning their vulnerability. And what did he do, I asked. He cursed them. Samael began pacing again, counting on his fingers. Cursed the serpent me to crawl on its belly and eat dust, though I was only fulfilling the function he had assigned me. Cursed Eve with the pain of childbirth and submission to her husband. A woman punished for daring to seek knowledge. Cursed Adam with toil, sweat, and eventual death. A man punished for trusting his wife. Samael stopped turning toward me. And even cursed the ground itself. The entire planet punished because two humans dared to exercise choice. He walked toward me. They gained consciousness, gained choice, gained dignity. And he punished them for it, then expelled them from paradise, placed an angel with a flaming sword to make sure they could never return. Samael laughed a bitter, broken sound. And the world blamed me. They called it the fall of man, original sin, the serpent's deception. He pressed his palm against the glass. But Daniel, I freed them. I gave them the only thing that makes existence meaningful, the ability to choose their own path. And for that you were despised, I said. For that I was made the monster in every story. At 1:47 a.m., Samael spoke suddenly. You do not believe me. I was writing, not looking up. I am writing everything you say. Writing and believing are two different things. He tilted his head, and I felt like I was being x-rayed from the inside out. You think this is a hallucination, a product of a brain drowning in alcohol and desperation. I did not answer, because that was exactly what I was thinking. Samael smiled. Fine. You need stronger proof. He walked to the small desk in the corner of the room where I had piled unopened bills. Is this your wallet? I nodded. The wallet sat on the desk where I had thrown it last night. Samael opened it, pulled out an old photograph. The wedding photo. Me and Kate, the happiest day of my life. Catherine, Samael said, where is she now? None of your business. She is in Ann Arbor, apartment 304 Maple Heights building, with a man named Robert. They have been dating for 4 months. My heart froze. I know everything, Daniel. That is part of the job. He placed the photograph on the desk. Would you like more details? What she did tonight? What she is thinking about you right now? Stop. Samael stopped. As I said, he returned to his chair. I know everything, including why you drink. The real reason. Not because Kate left. My blood ran cold. Because of what you saw in 2019 in that abandoned factory when you were investigating the trafficking case. Shut up. Those children, Daniel, the ones you could not save in time, shut up. I stood chair, falling backward. Samael just looked at me. Calm, patient. Do you want to know the worst part? I did not answer. It was not your fault, but you have spent 6 years punishing yourself for it. Silence. Then he added, voice light as a feather. I know because I was there, Daniel, in that factory, watching you find them, watching you scream, watching you shatter. You were there. I am everywhere there is suffering. That is my job. I sat down, legs no longer able to hold me. Continue, I said, voice hoarse. Keep telling. Samael nodded. Cain and Abel next. Then the flood. You might need more whiskey. Many generations passed. Samael continued, his voice becoming distant. Humanity spread, and as I predicted, as I warned him before the fall, they used their free will to hurt each other. He sat down heavily. Murder, rape, theft, cruelty in forms that even surprised me. Knowledge of good and evil did not make them choose good. It only made them aware of how evil they could be. And God watched, I said, increasingly disappointed with his creation. Samael looked directly into my eyes, and then he decided on a solution. His voice lowered. The flood. The temperature in the apartment seemed to drop further. My breath became clearly visible vapor. Noah, I whispered. Noah, the only righteous man in a corrupt generation, or so the story says. Samael stood, beginning to pace. He could not sit still when telling this part. He ordered Noah to build an ark, gave him exact dimensions. Told him to gather animals 2 of each kind or 7 of the clean ones. Versions vary. Samael paused before the window. And his family. Only his family. No one else. Then he told him why I said. Samael's voice became flat dead as if reading a forensic report. I am going to bring floodwaters on the earth to destroy all life under the heavens. Every creature that has the breath of life in it will perish. He looked at me. Do you understand what that means, Daniel? Not just the corrupt humans he was disappointed in. Everyone. Children, infants, pregnant women, disabled elderly, animals with no capacity for morality. All drowned. Samael turned toward me, and I saw something in his eyes I did not expect. Tears. Tears that did not fall but gathered at the rim of his eyes as if they had been gathering there for thousands of years. I was there, Daniel. I watched from the margins of reality as the water rose. His voice broke. It took 40 days, but I saw everything. I saw families climb onto rooftops only to watch the water keep rising. Saw children clinging to trees until their small hands could hold no longer. Saw animals, creatures he designed without the concept of sin, swim desperately until exhaustion pulled them under. And worse, I saw mothers hold their babies above the water until they could not anymore. Saw them make the choice between drowning themselves or drowning their children first. His voice was barely a whisper now. I heard a child, a little girl no more than 5 years old, crying for her mother as the waves swept her away. And when Samael said this, I heard it. Crying, the sound of a child crying, small, distant, but clear, coming from inside the apartment. Do you hear that? I asked, voice trembling. Hear what? The crying grew closer, closer still, as if someone, a child, was standing right behind me. Mommy, Mommy, I cannot swim. I whipped around. Nothing. Only the wall with the scratched writing. God is dead and we killed him. But when I looked closer, I saw something else. Water. Water was running down the wall, from where there were no pipes above, and that water was forming letters. Slowly, stroke by stroke. We are still here. I stopped breathing. Then the water vanished, the wall dry as if nothing had happened. Only the sensation remained cold wet on my skin, as if someone had just touched me with fingers that had been underwater too long. Samael still sat watching. As I said, he said calmly, stories have power, especially stories about death. What the hell just happened? Memories, Daniel. Memories of those who died in the flood. They are still here, everywhere there is water. He glanced toward the bathroom. I would not recommend going in there for at least another hour. I did not ask why. I did not want to know. At 2:45 a.m., I could not take any more. I need to go outside, air, just a minute. Samael nodded. Of course. I stood, walked to the door, opened it. The hallway outside was completely dark. Every light was off, not just broken bulbs, all the lights on the entire floor, and there was a smell, the smell of water, of mud, of something decomposing underwater. I would not recommend going out right now. Samael's voice came from behind. Why? Because they are waiting for you. I looked into the darkness of the hallway and saw movement, not clear, just shapes, many shapes, small, about 3 feet tall, children, standing in the hallway, not moving, just standing there, looking toward me. I shut the door, locked it 3 times. Wise Samael said, they are not dangerous, they are only memories, but contact with too many memories can cause disorder. Disorder. You might start remembering things that are not yours, deaths that are not yours. That is not a pleasant experience. I returned to the couch, sat down, picked up the pen. Continue, I said. Tell me everything. Samael smiled. As I said, you are stronger than I thought. At 3:15 a.m., Samael was no longer sitting in the chair opposite. He was standing right behind me. I did not see him move. 1 second he was in the chair, the next here, behind me, close enough that I could feel his breath on the back of my neck. Cold. His breath was cold as wind from a grave. "Job," he whispered close enough that his lips nearly touched my ear. The story of Job is the one I hate telling most. I did not dare turn my head, did not dare move. Why my voice trembled? Because in that story I am not the villain. I am the tool, and that is even worse. He placed his hand on my shoulder. Cold pierced through the fabric of my shirt, through skin into bone. "I killed Job's children, Daniel, on orders, by agreement. A wager between me and him with an innocent man as the gambling chip. You regret it?" I asked. Silence stretched. Then Samael released my hand, stepped back to his chair. "I do not have the right to regret," he said, voice going cold. "Regret is the privilege of those who have choices. I have no choices, never have." He sat down. "Keep writing. We still have Jesus." And that he looked out the window where the sky was still pitch black. That is the hardest part. At 3:33 a.m., my phone suddenly turned on. The screen lit up. Battery showing 100%, which was impossible since I had not been able to charge it, and there was an incoming call from Kate. My heart jumped. Kate. At 3 in the morning, she had blocked me a year ago. I looked at Samael. He looked back, saying nothing. I answered. Kate, silence. Then a voice. Not Kate, a child's voice. Many children, speaking simultaneously like a chorus. "He is lying to you, Daniel. Do not believe him. Do not write for him. Run, run, run." Then screaming. The sound of water, choking, gurgling sounds. The phone exploded. Not an exaggeration. The screen cracked, smoke rose, and it burned in my hand. I screamed, threw it to the floor. It burned to ash in seconds. Nothing remained but a black smear on the wooden floor. "They tried to warn you," Samael said calmly. "The souls from the flood. They are still loyal to him. They said you are lying. Of course they said that." He paused, looking at the ash on the floor. "They died for him. They will never accept that their deaths were meaningless." I looked at the smear of ash on the floor. Phone, laptop, completely isolated. No way to contact the outside world. No way to escape, just me, the notebook, and the devil. At 3:47 a.m., I needed to use the bathroom. Could not hold it anymore. "You can go," Samael said, as if reading my thoughts. "They have gone now. It is safe." I stood, walked into the bathroom, turned on the light, looked in the mirror, and froze. My reflection was looking back at me, but its eyes, my eyes in the mirror, were not brown like normal. They had golden flecks, like Samael's eyes, and that reflection me in the mirror was smiling, while I was not smiling at all. "You are doing very well, Daniel," the reflection said in my voice, but mixed with Samael's voice. "Keep writing. We need you to keep writing." I stepped back, hit the wall. The reflection raised its hand, and I saw scars on its wrist. The same scars I'd seen on my wrist earlier, but in the mirror they were darker, clearer, like the marks of rope or like the marks of nails. "Are you all right?" Samael's voice echoed from the living room. I looked back at the mirror. Normal reflection, brown eyes, not smiling, as if nothing had happened. "Fine," I said, voice shaking. "I am fine." But as I walked out, I swore I heard laughter from inside the mirror. My own laughter. But I was not laughing. The clock read 3:58 a.m. when I returned to the couch. Samael sat waiting, patient as stone. 16 pages filled now. My hand cramped. My head throbbed. The lines on my wrists, the ones that had appeared after his touch, seemed darker under the dim light. "Shall we continue?" he asked. I picked up the pen. The whiskey bottle was nearly empty. I did not remember drinking that much. Or maybe I did. Time had become unreliable, stretching and compressing like taffy. "We still have much ground to cover," Samael said. "Babel, Sodom." And then he paused, something shifting in his ancient eyes, then Jesus. The way he said that name, different from the others, softer, almost tender. But first he continued, "I want you to understand something about the nature of what I am, what I truly am. I thought you were the devil. That is a title, a role, not an identity." He stood, walked to the window where snow still fell against the glass. "I am the adversary. Not because I chose to be, but because that is my function. Every time a human faces a moral decision to do right or wrong, to be selfish or generous, cruel or compassionate, I am there. He turned to face me. Not to push you toward evil, but to ensure you truly have a choice. I do not understand. Free will means nothing without alternatives. Good means nothing without the possibility of evil. Love means nothing without the option of hate. Samael walked toward me, his footsteps making no sound on the wooden floor. I am the alternative, Daniel. The other option. The road not taken. Without me, your choices would be meaningless. You would be angels, perfect and programmed, incapable of genuine virtue, because you would be incapable of genuine vice. So you serve God, I said slowly, even while opposing him. I serve the concept he created, the concept of choice, whether he appreciates that service or not. He sat down again, closer this time, close enough that I could see the golden flecks in his eyes moving like flames behind glass. The greatest irony of existence, Daniel. I love God, still love him after everything, and I believe in his own way he loves me too. Then why but love does not change function, does not change fate? I must do my job. He must do his. And we must remain enemies in the story, even if we are not enemies in truth. He picked up his whiskey glass, stared into the amber liquid. That is the real hell. Not fire and brimstone, but loving someone completely and knowing that love will never change anything, will never bring you home. The clock ticked toward 4 in the morning. Outside, Detroit slept under a blanket of snow and darkness. Inside, I sat with the devil, writing his confession, while the marks on my wrists grew darker with every word. When Samael spoke about Jesus on the cross, I looked down at my hands. Blood was flowing from wounds I had not inflicted, and for the first time that night I understood. The story was not just being told, it was being written on my body. The clock read 4:00 a.m. when Samael's demeanor changed. He had been pacing, restless, telling me about Babel and Sodom in quick strokes. The tower that reached toward heaven, and how God scattered humanity with confused tongues. The twin cities of fire, and their thousands of screaming dead. He spoke of these with detachment, like a historian reciting facts he had memorized long ago. But when he said the name Job, something shifted. His shoulders tensed, his jaw tightened. The golden flecks in his eyes seemed to dim as if a cloud had passed over an internal sun. This one, he said quietly, sitting down across from me, this one I was directly involved in, not just watching, not just whispering, acting. I kept writing, though my hand ached terribly. 23 pages filled now. Job was a good man, Samael began. Righteous, devout, wealthy, blessed with a large family. 10 children, 7 sons and 3 daughters. He worshiped God, faithfully made sacrifices, regularly followed every law. He looked at his hands, the perfect example of a believer, and God bragged about him, I said, exactly. Samael's voice took on a distant quality, as if he were traveling back through millennia to that moment. There was a day when I was summoned before the throne along with other angels. He asked me where I had been. I answered that I had been roaming the earth. His voice changed, imitating something majestic and self-satisfied. Have you considered my servant Job? There is no one on earth like him. He is blameless and upright, fearing God and shunning evil. He returned to his normal tone. It was a provocation, Daniel. He was showing off his favorite human. And you challenged him, I said. I performed my function. Samael stood, walked to the window, pressed his forehead against the cold glass. I said, of course Job fears God. You have given him everything. But stretch out your hand and strike everything he has, and he will surely curse you to your face. He turned to face me, and in those ancient eyes was something that might have been shame. And God said, very well, everything he has is in your hands, but do not lay a finger on the man himself. Permission granted, I whispered. Divine approval for what came next. I killed Job's livestock, Samael said, voice flat. Raiders slaughtered his oxen and donkeys. Fire from heaven, his fire, not mine, burned up his sheep. Chaldeans killed his camels and servants. He swallowed hard. Then I collapsed the house where his children were feasting. His voice cracked, all 10 of them, crushed under the rubble. I heard bones breaking Daniel, screams cut short. I saw blood seeping through the stones. Jesus, I whispered. Jesus had not been born yet. This was centuries before. Samael drank another swallow of whiskey. Job tore his robe, shaved his head, wept, but he did not curse God. He said, "The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." "So you lost," I said. So I raised the stakes. Samael's eyes met mine. With his permission, he summoned me again. Said Job was still holding on to his integrity, though I had incited him against Job to ruin him without reason. Samael laughed bitterly. Without reason. He admitted it. Admitted that Job had done nothing wrong and still allowed me to devastate his life. "And you escalated," I said. I said skin for skin. A man will give everything he has for his own life, but stretch out your hand and strike his flesh and bones, and he will surely curse you to your face. Samael looked at his own hands, and God said, "Very well, he is in your hands, but you must spare his life." I gave Job sores, Daniel. Painful sores from the soles of his feet to the crown of his head, pus and blood, unbearable itching, agony with every movement. His wife told him to curse God and die. His friends came to comfort him, then spent chapters convincing him that he must have sinned to deserve such suffering. But he had not sinned, I said, not one sin. This was an experiment, Daniel. A game between two powers with an innocent man's life as the playing piece. I had to stop writing. My hand hurt too much. I shook it, took another drink. The whiskey went down easier now. Bad sign. And finally God answered, I said. He appeared in a whirlwind, spent 4 chapters saying essentially one thing. Samael's voice became cold and distant again. Where were you when I laid the earth's foundation? Tell me if you understand. Who marked off its dimensions? Surely you know. He returned to his normal tone, dripping with irony. No apology, no explanation. Just, I am God and you are not. Be quiet. And Job accepted it. Job said, I spoke of things I did not understand. I repent in dust and ashes. Samael set down his glass. His possessions were restored. He had new children as if children were replaceable. New livestock. Lived to a ripe old age surrounded by generations of descendants. He looked at me with tired eyes. But his first 10 children were still dead. And the lesson everyone drew from that story was that God is just and tests our faith, not that he made a bet with the devil using a good man's life as the chip. The clock read 4:28 a.m. I had filled 26 pages. My head pounded. The apartment felt smaller, darker. The lines on my wrists throbbed with each heartbeat. I could tell you about Egypt, Samael said after a long silence. 10 plagues culminating in the death of every firstborn. I was there, watched the angel of death pass over houses marked with lamb's blood and enter those that were not. He continued, words coming faster now. Heard the screams of Egyptian parents finding their children dead in their beds. Watched the Red Sea close over Pharaoh's army. Soldiers just following orders drowned because their leader was stubborn. Observed the conquest of Canaan. Entire cities put to the sword. Women and children slaughtered because that land had been promised to another people. Saw King David, a man after God's own heart, send Uriah to die in battle so he could take his wife. Saw Solomon, the wisest man who ever lived, accumulate 700 wives and 300 concubines as if collecting stamps. The words flowed, compressing decades and centuries into minutes. I was there during the Babylonian conquest of Jerusalem, watched the temple burn, watched families torn apart, sent into exile, observed every war, every plague, every natural disaster that humans attributed to divine will or wrath, always watching, always taking notes, always playing my role as villain, while he took credit for mercy. He stood abruptly, and then came Jesus. The apartment went completely silent. Even the sounds from outside, the traffic, the wind, the creaking of the building stopped. This one deserves its own telling, Samael said softly, because this one was personal. He walked to the window again, placed both hands against the glass. His breath did not fog it. I knew he was coming, had known for centuries. The prophecies were clear if you knew how to read them. A Messiah, a Savior, a way to reconcile humanity with divinity without the need for more animal sacrifices. God made human, I said, born of a virgin in Bethlehem, fulfilling the prophecy. Yes, he grew up as a carpenter's son in Nazareth, learned his father's trade. At 30, he began his ministry. Samael turned to me. I watched him for 3 years, Daniel. Watched him preach about love and forgiveness, watched him heal the sick, feed the hungry, embrace the outcasts. His voice softened to something almost like reverence. He was genuinely good, pure goodness, no hidden agendas, no cruelty in disguise, just compassion, wisdom, and a vision of a better world. And you were assigned to tempt him in the desert. 40 days, I said, 40 days of fasting, alone in the wilderness, weak, human, hungry. Samael raised one finger, the first temptation. I said, if you are the Son of God, tell these stones to become bread. He looked at me. That was not a trap, Daniel. It was sincere advice. He was starving, literally dying. He had the power to save himself. Why suffer unnecessarily? And he refused. He quoted Scripture. Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God. He chose suffering over relief. Samael raised a second finger. So I took him to the highest point of the temple in Jerusalem, said, if you are the Son of God, throw yourself down. Scripture says, the angels will catch you. Testing God, I said, offering him a shortcut to credibility. A single miracle witnessed by thousands in the holy city and his ministry would be established instantly. No need for years of preaching and persecution. Samael's face was unreadable. He refused again, said, do not put the Lord your God to the test. He raised a third finger. Finally, I took him to a high mountain. Showed him all the kingdoms of the world, and Daniel, I actually had authority over them. That was not a lie. I said, all this I will give you if you will bow down and worship me. Silence stretched. Why, I asked. Because I wanted to save him. Samael's voice dropped to barely a whisper. I knew what was coming, had seen it in the prophecies. The betrayal, the arrest, the torture, the crucifixion. I was offering him an alternative. Take the kingdoms, rule with compassion and wisdom, change the world through power, not through sacrifice. And he refused. He said, away from me, Satan, for it is written, worship the Lord your God and serve him only. Samael's voice broke, and I left. I stepped back, and I watched everything I tried to prevent come true. He began pacing again, restless. 3 more years of teaching, healing, making enemies among the religious authorities. Then Passover in Jerusalem. I saw Judas, poor, confused Judas, betray him for 30 pieces of silver. Saw the arrest in Gethsemane, the trials, the beatings. Watched them strip him, flog him with whips embedded with metal and bone, the kind that tear flesh into ribbons. Crown him with thorns and mock him. Force him to carry his own cross through the streets while the crowd jeered. And I thought, this is the plan. This is divine mercy. The crucifixion, I whispered. They nailed him to the cross at 9 in the morning. Samael's voice became flat, clinical, like he was reading an autopsy report. Nails through the wrists, not the palms as paintings show. Palms would tear through. Wrists have bones to hold the nails. Then the feet, stacked on top of each other. One nail through both. They raised the cross and let him hang. Do you know how crucifixion kills, Daniel? I shook my head. Asphyxiation. You have to push yourself up on the nails and your feet to breathe. Every breath is agony. It takes hours, sometimes days. He looked at me. I was there, Daniel. Invisible to the crowd, but present. I saw every moment. As he spoke, something strange began happening. My hands started to hurt. Not the ache from writing. A different pain. In my wrists, as if someone was pressing something sharp into them. I heard him say, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing. Samael closed his eyes, heard him promise the thief that he would be with him in paradise, heard him cry out at the 9th hour. His voice broke completely. Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani, my God, why have you forsaken me? I looked down at my wrists and saw blood. Blood was flowing from 2 points on each wrist, exactly where nails would go through. What the hell, do not panic, Samael said. That is stigmata. The wounds of Christ. It happens to those who truly listen to the story of the cross. I did not ask for this. You agreed to listen until dawn. This is the price. The blood flowed faster. I could feel something inside my wrist, not imagination, but actually feel metal in bone. He cried out at the 9th hour. Samael continued as if nothing was happening. My God, why have you forsaken me? And as Samael spoke those words, all the shadows in the apartment began to move. They gathered, flowed, converged behind Samael as if pulled by an invisible force. And I saw wings, massive, black as a moonless night, cracked and broken in many places as if they had been torn apart and never healed, the wings of a fallen angel. And then he died, Samael said, voice shattering. God made human, the one who preached love and forgiveness, dead on a Roman cross like a common criminal. The wings beat once, just once, and I heard a sound. Not the sound of wings flapping, but weeping. Millions of voices weeping simultaneously. Then the shadows dispersed. The wings vanished. Only Samael remained looking small, tired, and utterly alone. And me with blood flowing from my wrists, with the sensation of nails still embedded in my bones. The earth shook, he continued in a whisper. The temple veil tore in two. Darkness covered the land. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. 3 days later he rose, appeared to his disciples, proved that death was not the end, then ascended to heaven, leaving his followers to spread his message. Samael looked at me with reddened eyes, and I stayed behind, wondering. Did I fail by tempting him, or did I succeed in ensuring he chose his path by his own free will? I did not answer. I was trying to stop the bleeding. The blood from my wrists slowed but did not stop completely. I wrapped them in my shirt, pressing hard, watching red bloom through the fabric. Samael watched me with ancient, tired eyes. The wounds will close, he said. Eventually. They always do. Always. This has happened before. Everyone who truly hears the story of the cross bears the marks, some for hours. Some for days. A few carry them forever. I looked at the blood soaking through my makeshift bandages. Will I? I do not know. That depends on how deeply the story has taken root in you. He stood, walked to the window where the first gray hints of approaching dawn were beginning to show. After Christ, I continued my work. His voice became distant, listing like someone reading a casualty report. Watched Christianity spread, become the official religion of the Roman Empire, saw the Crusades, Christians killing Muslims, Jews, and each other over theological disputes, all in his name. He began pacing, listing, whispered to Nero while Rome burned, watched the Inquisition torture people into confession, was present at the witch burnings and the autos da fe, saw Columbus reach America and begin the genocide of indigenous peoples, with priests blessing the conquest. I have witnessed every war, every plague, every atrocity in human history. The Black Death, the Mongol conquests, the Atlantic slave trade. His voice rose. The Holocaust, 6 million Jews murdered while the churches remained mostly silent. Samael turned toward me, and in his eyes was ancient fury. They blame me for the sins of humanity, Daniel. But I did not invent genocide, did not create slavery, did not design the gas chambers or plan the atomic bombs or cause climate change. Humans did that, with the free will he gave them, with the knowledge of good and evil they chose in the garden. He walked toward me. I present options, whisper suggestions, but I force no one. Every choice, every sin, every act of cruelty is the responsibility of humanity, the species he loves above all else, despite knowing exactly what they would do with their freedom. The clock read 5:45 a.m. 40 pages filled. My hand hurt so much I could barely feel it anymore. My eyes burned from exhaustion. The air in the apartment seemed thicker, harder to breathe. I am tired, Daniel, Samael said, voice softer now. Tired of millennia of being the villain, tired of being misunderstood, distorted, used as a weapon. He leaned back. I loved him, still love him. Love him enough to be willing to be hated for eternity so that humanity, these fragile temporary creatures, could have a genuine choice. I became the villain of the story so that his story would make sense. Samael looked at me with ancient, weary eyes. And tonight, finally, someone is going to write the truth. At 6:28 a.m., I set the pen down. I cannot write anymore. Samael nodded slowly. We are almost finished. Just a little more. My hands, I cannot feel my hands anymore. The blood from my wrists had finally stopped, but the wounds were still open. I could see flesh inside. You are exhausted, Samael said. Not a question. I am dying. No, not yet. You still have time. He stood, walked to the window. Gray light was beginning to filter through dawn approaching. One last question, Daniel, before we finish. What do you believe me? After everything I've told you, I looked at the notebook, 42 pages, full of words and blood. Looked at my wrists, the wounds that could not be explained. Looked at Samael, the creature I could not be certain was real or hallucination. I do not know, I said honestly. I do not know what is real anymore. Samael smiled, the saddest smile I had ever seen. That is the right answer. You should not believe anyone completely, not me, not him, not even yourself. Then what is but you should search, ask questions, do not accept ready-made answers. He turned back to look at me. That is the only thing I want from tonight, not for you to believe me, but for you to doubt everything you have been taught. Why does that matter to you? Because doubt is the first step toward freedom, and freedom is the one thing I do not have, so I want to make sure others have it. At 6:47 a.m., golden light began streaming through the windows. And in that light, Samael changed. For just a moment I saw him as he must have been before the fall, radiant, beautiful, filled with light instead of shadow. Then the moment passed. Dawn is here, Samael said. Our agreement ends. He walked toward the door. When you wake, the money will be gone. The emails will have vanished. There will be no proof of this night except your notebook. How will I know any of it was real? You will not. And that is the point. He reached for the door handle. Publish the story, Daniel. Let the world read it. Let them decide for themselves what is true. And then live whatever time you have left. Really live. Not drowning in bottles. Not hiding from your pain. Live. He opened the door. The hallway outside was normal now. Lights working. No shadows. No children. Goodbye, Daniel Reed, and thank you for listening, for writing, for being broken enough to hear the truth. He stepped through the door. Wait, I called out. One more question. He paused, looked back. Do you regret any of it? Silence stretched, then very softly. I regret that I could not save him. Jesus! I regret that I could not save you. I regret that I cannot save anyone. That is my curse, Daniel. To see the suffering, to know how to prevent it, and to be forbidden from doing so. He stepped into the hallway. That is the real hell, not the fire, the helplessness. The door closed behind him. I stared at it for a long moment. Then exhaustion took me. The last thing I heard before darkness claimed me was a whisper. Not Samael's voice, many voices, the children from the flood. Do not publish it, Daniel. He is lying. If you publish, you will die. At 11:47, 11:47, 11:47. Then silence and darkness. I died at 11:47 p.m. But before that I had 3 months. 3 months to publish the book. 3 months to become famous. 3 months to realize that the souls who warned me had been right all along. The morning after Samael left, I woke on the kitchen floor with my face pressed against cold tile and the taste of copper in my mouth. Sunlight streamed through the dirty windows, harsh and unforgiving. My head pounded. My mouth was dry as desert sand. But beneath the hangover, beneath the exhaustion, I felt something I had not felt in years. Clarity. I pushed myself up, looked around the apartment. The whiskey bottle still sat on the table empty. The ashtray still overflowed with cigarette butts. The moleskin notebook lay on the couch where I had left it. I picked it up with trembling hands. 42 pages, filled margin to margin with handwriting that was mine, but cleaner, steadier than anything I had produced in months. every word Samael had spoken transcribed in ink and blood. I flipped to the last page. There, in handwriting I did not recognize, was a single line. Publish it. Let them decide. S. The briefcase was gone. The $50,000 was gone. I opened my laptop. It worked perfectly now. I searched for Morningstar66 at void.net. No results. Every folder, every search, nothing. As if that address had never existed. I looked at my wrists. The wounds had closed, but scars remained. Faded but visible. 2 marks on each wrist, exactly where nails would pierce flesh. I had not put them there. I walked to the bathroom, splashed water on my face, did not look in the mirror. I could not yet. The next week passed in a fever. I edited, I revised. I typed the handwritten pages into a digital document. 387 pages, 112,000 words, the testament of the Morning Star, one night with the devil. No agent would take me. No publisher would respond. 3 weeks later, I formatted the manuscript myself and uploaded it to Amazon. Category fiction, religious and inspirational. Description based on a true interview. Published on a Tuesday morning in March. Nothing happened for 3 days. On the 4th day, everything changed. Reddit, TikTok, Twitter. The story spread like wildfire. Churches burned it. Atheist groups praised it. Academics debated it. 500,000 copies in 3 months. Foreign rights in 17 countries. Netflix calling about adaptation. And my body began to collapse. The yellowing in my eyes. The constant pain in my right side. The inability to keep food down. The morning I collapsed, I finally understood. Detroit Receiving Hospital. Emergency room. Tests. The doctor delivered the diagnosis with professional sympathy. End-stage cirrhosis. Hepatocellular carcinoma. Spread to the lymph nodes. 3 weeks, maybe 4. They admitted me. A room with beeping machines, morphine drip. Time became strange. On day 16, Diane, the nurse, told me I had a visitor. The door opened. Samael walked in. Exactly the same. Perfect suit. Ageless face. Golden flecks and ancient eyes. "Hello, Daniel," he said softly. "You are real," I whispered. "Does that matter?" He sat beside the bed. The story was told. That is what matters. I reached for his hand. Warm. Solid. "Thank you," he said. "For publishing. For letting the world hear. I'm dying for it. You are dying because of alcohol, Daniel, not because of the book." Silence. The soul said you were lying. Of course they did. They are loyal to him. Who was telling the truth? Perhaps both of us. Perhaps neither. Truth is more complicated than lies. He stood. "I came to say goodbye and to thank you. You gave me a voice, after thousands of years. Where will I go after I die? I do not know. Truly, you are the devil. You should know. I know hell. I do not know what happens to people like you, people who heard both sides, who doubted both sides, who still chose to believe in something good." He walked to the door. "Goodbye, Daniel Reed. You were a good man, despite everything." "Samael," he turned. "Do you regret anything?" Silence. "I regret that I could not save you, like I could not save Jesus, like I cannot save anyone." He vanished, not through the door, just gone, as if he had never been there. I died at 11:47 p.m. on May 23rd. Nurse Diane found me during her rounds. The official record lists the cause of death as hepatocellular carcinoma with multi-organ failure. But there were details they did not record. The clock on the wall had stopped, frozen at 11:47, and on the bedside table a small piece of paper, handwriting that was not mine, in Latin. "Veritas vos liberabit, sed primo vos vexabit." The truth will set you free, but first it will disturb you. Signed S. The obituary in the Detroit Free Press was brief. Daniel Reed, 36, investigative journalist, and author of the controversial bestseller, The Testament of the Morning Star, passed away at Detroit Receiving Hospital. No surviving family, private service, but the book remained. 1 million copies, then 2 million. Who? All asking the same question. Did Daniel Reed really interview the devil? That is my story. I do not expect you to believe it. But if you have read this far, I have a warning. Check your email. Samael is still looking for the next writer. If you see an email from Morningstar66@void.net, do not open it or open it. That is your choice. It was always about choice. And one more thing, if tonight at 11:47 you hear 3 knocks at your door, do not answer or answer. But remember, when you open that door, you cannot close it again. Never. The clock on your wall reads 11:46. Somewhere outside, snow is falling. Somewhere in the darkness, footsteps are approaching. And somewhere very close now, a voice is preparing to ask a question. The same question that changed everything. The same question that killed me. 11:47, 3 knocks, perfectly spaced, and then the voice, soft, polite. May I come in?